Hey there, Blank Bodies listeners. Before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to give a quick thanks to everyone for such a great weekend at Gen Con. We had an impromptu get-together with some of our community members who were in town. It was super awesome to get to hang out, share some drinks, grab a bite, and meet a bunch of you. So thanks for everyone who came out. I'm definitely excited to do it again next year. Also, a big thanks to Joel, or T. Williams, for inviting us out to the LARP, and all the STs who made it possible. It was my first time LARPing, and I was pretty nervous, but I'll be honest, I had an absolutely great evening in New Orleans. And finally, I wanted to thank Jason for the chance to finally play some Wraith. Had a great time, but because of Gen Con, we had to flip our schedule back a little bit. We didn't have time to record a full episode, so instead we have a little bonus interview I did a little bit in advance. So here's my interview with Brent on the Origin of Battlemechs. Hope you enjoy and have a great day. Thanks. Hi, and welcome to Blank Bodies, a Vampire the Masquerade, tabletop, and horror podcast. I'm Hunter, and today I have a very special guest. We have Brent with us today from On the Origin of Battlemech.
Yes, hello. This is Brent Stewart. I do On the Origin of Battlemechs podcast, and I like to talk about big stompy robots.
That's about the best quick description I could think of.
Yeah. It's like, wait, sorry, I'm intrigued now. What?
For those who don't know much about Battletech, tell us
a little. It's also known as the Mech Warrior series, which a lot more people know it as because of the video games, because that is what the video games go by. But classic Battletech, or the Battletech universe, has been around for 35 years. It started off as a tabletop game, or a board game technically, and then quickly turned into, a war game where there was more than could fit in a single box, because that's how these things work. Classic Battletech is a lot of fun, but it's one of those games where, there's rules, and there's lots of rules. And if you want to play a campaign set in the universe, there's rules for that. If you want to run a mercenary company, there's rules for that. There's how granular do you want to get is basically one of the selling points of the universe, I feel, because you can be as fluffy and light and run around in a giant war machine of death, shooting everybody, laughing, or you can, micromanage a spreadsheet. What do you want to do?
Yeah, I actually don't have a lot of personal experience with war games. I at one point attempted to get into 40K, but that did not last very long. My allowance did not allow for that. But I did.
Wallet is a hurdle for that game.
Yes, I actually did get into Battletech a little bit because I found they had the flat printouts. You could just print out the ships, cut them out, and do little paper origami ships.
So this is one of the things that I think is really great about Battletech as a game. In the Battletech manual, the Battletech Mech manual, which is your starting book, the entry level to the universe for mech combat. It literally says on one of the first couple pages, you can play this on anything you want, use a bottle cap to signify a mech, as long as things are clearly marked. Have fun, because this was it's been around for over 30 years, and miniature production has gotten really good recently, but back in the day, it was spotty, we'll say.
It's funny, I've seen some of the early D&D and fantasy miniatures that now go for thousands upon thousands of dollars just because they're so old, but then you look at them and you're like, wait, that's supposed to be a what now?
Yeah.
It looks like the top hat from Monopoly. It's supposed to be a kobold.
Yeah, so classic Battletech specifically, which is the focus of the podcast, although we do reference Alpha Strike quite a bit, which is the larger version, which I can cover in a bit. Classic Battletech is usually played on a hex grid, and you have map packs and these really cool play mats that Catalyst Games, the current license holder for the tabletop, has come out with, which are awesome. They're basically, play mats a la Magic the Gathering, except a little bigger, and has the map and hexes printed on it, and so you can just unroll and go, which I think is like, it's going to be great for playing when we can get back out there and start playing again.
Yeah, I found I like that a lot for D&D, and I don't really draw like big elaborate maps anymore. I usually pull out like a square grid, but and then just like dry erase on that. So I feel like having that quick laid out go, you're moving. I always hated the arguments that came out of like the little bit of Warhammer I played with the rulers.
Yeah. And like I said, Classic Battletech has a lot of rules and can get into the, how deep do you want to go? And I personally think that rule set is best played with each player playing a single machine, and it being more of like a Solaris one-on-one, or like a team versus someone playing an Op4 sort of thing, as opposed to people controlling multiple things, because then it can just get slowed down in the table politics of who wants to go first and that kind of stuff. That being said, Megamech is a great online resource for playing with people online that does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Okay, so it's kind of like Foundry or something like that, but for...
Yeah, so Megamech is, and shout out to these guys because they are all volunteers and members of the community that have, in my opinion, done a lot of work to keep the IP alive. Megamech is a open source, free to play, basically, I think it's actually Flash or something equivalent, very basic, stripped down interface for playing classic Battletech. It has all of the rule sets uploaded, all of the images for the miniatures from like directly over top. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there. It's just not particularly intuitive, or if it is, it's because you are from the old days of computers. And it's really rewarding when you want to roll up your sleeves and get in there, but the learning curve is quite high. And then you have, as I mentioned earlier, Alpha Strike, which is a relatively newer format where you control more units, and the rules are simplified and streamlined so that you can have whole engagements as opposed to a focus of a duel sort of thing.
Okay, so it simplifies the rules, but then it gives you more pieces to counterbalance that.
Yeah, like if you were wanting to play a game with combined arms and infantry and power armor in classic Battletech, that is a weekend, whereas in Alpha Strike, that's an afternoon.
So if someone were new and we're like, this Battletech stuff sounds great, where would you point them out first? I mean...
Well, my elevator pitch of what would you be interested in is my elevator pitch for Battletech is kind of it's Game of Thrones in space in 1,000 years, but instead of knights, it's giant stompy robots. And Battletech also takes place over several hundred years. Like it has distinct eras, as in you have the early Star League, which is this like golden age of humanity expanding and technological progress and huge leaps in innovation. But there's also a dark underside about, the periphery being brought into line, see ancient Rome as a parallel. And you get, after that, the fall of the Star League and Succession Wars, which is all of the remaining great houses vying for control of what's left. And during that time, they quite literally nuke each other down the tech ladder. So you have this high tech level, and then you have this dark age. And as the fiction comes in at the fourth Succession War, humanity has started to find these things called memory cores, which are basically big hard drives from the Star League era that has all the tech info. And so it's like, we know how to make these things now. And you start to get that reclimb in technology. And just when things are starting to look stable or whatever, that's when the clans show up, a warrior culture designed quite literally in an iron womb, ruled by a warrior caste driving towards Terra. And that's the quote unquote like beginning first 25 years of what the novels cover. The fiction where we're at now is actually 100 years later, and there has been tons of events. There was a fast forward because of the IP changing hands and all that kind of stuff because real world, and now there's the new Star League has shown up because someone has taken Terra, and we will see how they are able to defend it and what grows from here.
So when you talk about these different eras, and you're playing the actual game, would you like both players agree to play mechs from a certain era, or is it kind of the text from this whole period is open, but the lore's there if you want to dig into it?
Kind of both. I mean, if you're just going to be down at your local game shop and doing a pickup game, you're probably not going to be super concerned about matching tech level. In the game, there is a number system called battle value, which translates across all eras. So something that is in the Succession Wars era, or like 3025, which is like the beginning, has a battle value of 625 for the sake of argument. Well, that battle value is still the same 125 years later. It's just, a lot of other light mechs are at the same tonnage now have a battle value of 1,000 because they have shinier tech. So the battle value system allows you to balance things by modifying your pilot numbers, which allows you to hit or pilot and survive getting hit better. And there's all these kinds of things that you can do to do that for like a pickup game. But if you want to do the like era specific or a campaign, or like your local game shop is having like all right, we're having a grinder, 1000 BV, bring a battle force, and it is, early Succession Wars. That means you can only get anything from that era. And they could even also go deeper and be, you can only get stuff from that era and your faction. And there's a really great resource called Master Unit List online. It's a free resource also run by volunteers that you can look up any unit. There's a chart for its battle value with all of the modified pilot numbers, and you can cross-reference things. It will tell you who has it when, in what eras, when things go extinct, because this is a universe where machines just disappear.
So it sounds like there's a lot of really good resources for someone who is interested in getting into the game to start out with.
I think so, and I hope that my podcast can be considered one of them, because that's kind of the aim of the podcast. We're covering each Battlemech chronologically and going until we're caught up, which is still a good couple hundred years. So we call that job security. And just we cover each machine as it comes out, the first model, and then each iteration. We cover the lore behind it, who makes it, where it's from, any important people that piloted it, and then we also have another section which is just general lore or anything interesting. Ideally, it's attached to the machine in some way. And so if somebody wants to be like, I picked up this force pack, because that's what the packs of mechs are called from Catalyst. You get, anywhere from 4 to 6 machines in one of those. And it's like, okay, I got a Black Knight, a Hermes, and something else, because I don't remember them all, because who can memorize all of those things when you can just know where they're written down? But it's like, okay, I've got this machine. I don't know anything about this machine. Well, here's a resource to learn all you need to know about this machine.
So, so when you go into the history of a specific mech, like what all goes behind that?
What is my research process?
No, like what kind of information goes with it? Like, are you talking about how it's designed, how they were used? Like,
So stepping back from the show, my background is I have a diploma as a mechanical engineering technologist from my local college back home. Haven't really worked in the field because of timing and economic reasons. Woo, 2008 crash. But I was inspired to go into mechanical engineering because I thought robots and technology are cool, and I really liked the Battletech series as a kid, as a teenager growing up, and I thought, like, let's try and make something that I think's cool real, and didn't pan out, but it is what it is. So now I take that knowledge and that information and I apply it to the rest of my life because, waste not, want not. And one of the things is I go, okay, let's look at this mech. Well, that's silly. That you can totally see the actuator. That's no wonder it has that quirk of exposed actuators. Of course, it's going to get a shot there and fall over, Or we talk about how some have articulated heads and like field of vision. We talk about what their mission profile would be. My co-host Chandler is also has a engineering background, but in a different field. And my previous co-host Joshua actually spent time serving in the Marines in the U.S. or for the U.S. And so had some experience seeing the battlefield at least a heck of a lot more than I have, and he has stepped back because life and other things. And to fill his seat, we have Derek, who actually just joined the rest of us in the continental North America from being deployed in South Korea. And he oversaw a logistics pool there. So, and I work I also work shipping receiving as my day job. So I have like logistics experience. And again, this is a universe of how granular do you want to get, because it can get real crunchy.
No, I think that's awesome. So it sounds like you guys kind of go into the history of the thing, how the ship works, and then you apply like actual real world engineering and, like, for lack of a better term, like battle experience to these mechs. I like that. That's a cool angle.
I mean, these are ultimately fictional things and toys, and so we can talk about it in a safe space. But like, if this were real, it's like, oh no, this is bad stuff.
Oh yeah. I don't. A little bit of a side tangent, but I don't know if you ever watched. I believe it was like a Kickstarter project, but they were trying to start like a real like mech fighting ring, where they're trying to build like the actual battle mechs, and it's been a nightmare just trying to design them.
Yeah, no, like, so the biggest hurdle right now, my understanding, haven't looked at it very closely in the real world tech for a while, is power source. Like the two-hand wavium technologies that Battletech has is it was last year, I believe, that GM figured out fusion nuclear energy. So that's cool. Our timeline apparently is the dark one, because we don't have that yet. And the other thing is these monomer muscles, which are basically a crystalline muscle thing that when you send electricity through it, it contracts, which is how they like replace the hydraulics or what have you for how things move and all of that. And of course, if you actually, there's a few machines that we get the cross section schematics for, because they're the pretty ones that they put on posters. And if you know a lot about how things work, it's like, the way this moves, it doesn't have the range of motion you think it does.
I looked up the name of it. If you want to see a very disappointing robot fight, it's from 2017. It was the Japanese Karatas versus the US's Megabot, and the Megabot looks.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yes.
And it is maybe one of the like saddest fights I've ever seen. There's so much hype for it, and then what they're basically just shooting fireworks at each other and like kind of bumping into each other. But so yeah, real world's way far off. But
yeah, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
But no, the universe is interesting. One of the differences is, humanity has spread throughout the stars, but our tech level, like I said, regressed. And even when it was at its height, we didn't have instantaneous communication between planets. We had to build generators that would send basically radio pulses through subspace to other ones that would pick it up. And so there was a delayed reaction because you can only shoot a message X amount of light years, just like you can only jump X amount of light years. And so the universe is very methodical and plotting. It isn't kind of just like a fleet shows up on the home world. It's more of a like, our war front has been pressed for 6 months.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I always find it interesting when you look at series like this and they come closer to real life. Like you said, it's been around for like 35 years. Same with like Shadowrun. You look at the original Shadowrun, and now it's like, well, cell phone in the original Shadowrun was like would have been like hyper expensive, but we still don't have like a beginner robot arm. But you can call anyone in China whenever you want for free at this point. So little bits of tech like that end up are always interesting to see.
Which is, to segue ever so slightly, I think one of the strengths of V5, because it addresses some of the increases in tech, V5 being the Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition.
Absolutely. I know some of the lore updates have been pretty controversial, but I mean, I think they make sense. Like there's no way the Nosferatu would just keep some online website with like a password that even the CIA can't crack up anymore. Like there's some things that needed changed. But yeah, speaking of Vampire, how did you get into Vampire originally?
So I've always been kind of aware of Vampire. It's one of those things of growing up in the age I did. It was one of those things where it kept it was the lightning rod for the residual satanic panic, we'll say. So it's one of those things that you at least knew about. Never really got a chance to explore it, but was always kind of interesting, particularly because all my life I've been interested in the occult, specifically the monsters of zombies, and vampires have always been quite interesting to me because, they're powerful metaphors for a lot of the human condition that can be mapped onto it. And I watched the Not a Drop to Drink run of V5 with Jacob Burgess on Loading Ready Run, which is actually some content creators that have been around for a long time. And I sing their praise. I also am associated with them in the sense of back in the day, because we're from the same place. I volunteered for their Desert Bus for Hope charity fundraiser, both like as a site volunteer and as a craft along member. I have moved on from that because I'm no longer in the same city, and also other things have taken up my time for crafting. But still a great yearly fundraiser that if you have the chance to check out, I recommend. It's weird though, but in the good way.
I used to watch a lot of it. I'm a big fan of Vine Sauce. I know he's one of the streamers that does that.
Yeah. So Jacob Burgess, who actually wrote part or was a contributor to Cult of the Blood God books, or the V5 source book Cult of the Blood Gods, and he had a really good campaign, and I was just like, you know what, I can do this. It was in the middle of the pandemic. I had gotten my podcast up and running, and I was like, this is really cool, this is interesting. And the more I learned about both V5 and the universe as a whole, I was just like, this is totally my jam. This is cool and fun and interesting, and like aside from the stuff that is very nope or cringe, which we will specifically not talk about, it's a really cool and interesting universe, and it has one of those very neat veneers of, you know, well, it doesn't matter if stuff contradicts each other because this is all propaganda unless you were there.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing I really like. I'd almost consider that a strength, is like the stuff that you could consider like nope or cringe is going to be different for everybody, but the system's like not afraid to kind of touch on a lot of real world stuff, even if you can make it optional in your personal game. I think.
Well,
I think being a modern game, even if it doesn't always maybe do it in the way you'd like or expect, I think the fact that they're very openly being like, this takes place right now in a slightly different world, and we're going to touch on real world stuff, I think is nice to see in a world where all the other games are kind of like, this is 102,000 years in the future, or like, this takes place in like
ye olde fantasy.
Yeah, having something a little more rooted is nice.
No, absolutely, and it gives a more immediate catharsis. I think, I think that is one of its strengths. And yeah, like there's one of the overlaps I really like between Vampire and the World of Darkness and Battletech is you get, you know, books from the Camarilla, the Anarch, and the Sabbat, and, you know, like all the other systems and supernatural stuff. But sorry, and in Battletech you have all the source books for all of the factions, which are, you know, they're not bad, but they're a basic personality, a skeleton to build off of. But the original run of novels in Battletech was like I want to say, if you're counting the Mech Warrior ones before FASA, like shipped everything off to WizKids, I want to say it was like 65, maybe 70 novels.
Damn.
And that's a lot. And it's not all one side. Like you literally get novels from characters of every faction. And you get this really interesting perspective of, you know, seeing events from different sides, sometimes literally seeing conversations from different characters in the same room. And there's all these perspectives, and, you know, no one's the good guy, no one's the bad guy. Everybody has pros, everybody has cons, you know, like, and that's a lot of what it's like in the World of Darkness.
Yeah, it definitely is a setting of no
nuance.
That's a good way to put it. I'll say no heroes, no villains, except situationally. But so I don't know too much about the Battletech lore. I played some of the video games. I think I played the Mech Warrior game for like the original PlayStation.
Nice.
If I'm remembering properly. That's my like biggest experience I've had with the series. But yeah, I know even with Vampire, I've read a couple of the clan novels, and they have very different perspectives, which is always interesting.
Yeah, no, Battletech is definitely interesting, and you get some interesting perspectives, especially when you start having the point of view being clan warriors who are pretty removed from our cultural touchstones, we'll say.
Yeah, that would make sense. After near total nuclear destruction in 100 years onward from that.
At least 100 years. Yeah.
But one question we always ask people is, what would be your favorite clan in Vampire the Masquerade?
That's a tough one because I honestly got to ST Vampire before I got to play Vampire. And so one of the things I did was build my city, the city I live in, as a playground for my players. And, you know, I wanted it to be diverse. And so I read all of the clans, and I read all of the books. And by read all of the books, I mean read the stuff I had access to. I had looks over at pile of book shame. And all of the clans are interesting to me in some way. They all have strengths, they all have failings, and they are all a lens to express some sort of story or human condition that you want, which is like an incredibly wordy non-answer, I know, but I feel it's true, and that's a strength of the game because that allows a player to jump into any clan they want theoretically. Whereas, if a player in D&D is like, I only like ranged combat, well, now you're like removed from playing these certain classes.
Yeah.
I personally really like the Malkavians as someone who is going through self-reflection, growth, some life experiences, and talking to professionals and life and stuff. I think if done well, they are incredibly interesting, and I think have a lot of potential, but all of that potential is surrounded by a whole lot of landmines.
That's fair. That's fair. I have said on the show before, I think they are probably my favorite clan. But it's also one that I always am careful to play if I'm not playing with the friends that I have always played with for over the years and know what they're okay with and they're not okay with. Like I wouldn't join a new game.
Not a beginner class and not a new party class.
Yeah. You don't want to be the guy who's like, we're going to play the silly game. And you're like, oh, I built a character who's dealing with like post-traumatic disorder by seeing visions of their dead soldier buddies, talking to them.
See, this is why session 0 is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, I say that, and I actually have session 0 with one of your co-hosts, John, tomorrow. And it was funny. I was looking at the calendar and I realized, oh, tomorrow is also the 2-year anniversary of my podcast. And just kind of funny how timing works out that way.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. The first year honestly flew by. I was like, oh, right. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that is when we started. I got to get back to work.
Yeah, that's kind of how it went for us. We hit our 1 year about a month ago. I've already lost track exactly, but it is very recently.
I recall wishing you congratulations in the Discord.
Yeah, it is interesting when you're creating something on a schedule like this, how quickly you kind of forget how long you've been doing it.
Mm-hmm. Routine is a powerful thing, both positive and negative.
Yeah, once something's become ritualized, watch out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I saw I believe you just released your 106th episode.
Yes, that was yesterday. That was the Talon, and yeah, so 106. We've been going for 2 years. If you do the math, that's about an episode a week. But we started off 2 episodes a week because early days, the pandemic, I was off work at the time and free time, and you can only play so many video games before you're like, I need a creative outlet.
Yeah, that's exactly how we started too, except about a year into it, when we thought we were safe the first time.
Yeah. But the started off with a breakneck production schedule, and then got back to work full time, and that had to gear down. And also scope creep is a thing. Anyone trying to make something or be a content creator, be aware of scope creep. Keep that in line because it's going to happen. You can't stop it. You can only rein it in.
Yeah, sometimes you have to tell yourself, no, maybe this can be 2 episodes. We don't need a 3-hour episode.
Yeah, there were some machines where I was just like, so this is 3 episodes and it's an hour and a half each. I should have made this 4.
We had to stop ourselves because we were originally like, we're going to release around an hour episode, and it's crept to about an hour and a half, and we've had some scripts that we're pushing into like 2 hours, and we're like, oh, we got to break these up. We really need to break these up.
Yeah. And our current production schedule is 1 episode every 2 weeks, and I'm working to get the YouTube channel up to date. The backlog, I'm only about 15 episodes behind, so catching up. And my co-host Chandler, being the Battletech lover that he is, and also the lover of combined arms, took it upon himself to start a side project sister show called Armor Up, where he looks at the vehicles and other weapons platforms of the Battletech universe as a additional thing. And his co-host is the Mr. Brute, who is a fixture in the community, especially if you are in and around WNRP, Wolfnet Radio Podcast, which is actually the community that I met all of these fine people through. Because communities, you know how they are, the Venn diagram, there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Shout outs where they are needed.
That's really cool. I know we've been more and more involved in the vampire community, or the family, if you will. And so it's really cool to meet new people through that, and just getting to see what everyone else who's into the vampire community has been doing. So tell us a little bit more about like the Battletech community. I know you speak really highly of it.
Yeah, so the Battletech community honestly is one of those ones that I feel I am a late comer to, because I found the universe when I was kind of a mid to late teenager, enjoyed it a whole bunch back before the internet was as established, and so it was kind of like my little oasis that I know other people enjoy, but I don't have any connection to them. And then there was a bit of a resurgence in the late or in the late 2010s with HBS Battletech, which is a Battletech turn-based strategy game, which I highly recommend. It is very, very good. And then also Catalyst Games had a Kickstarter, which was way more successful than they anticipated. And since then, the community has kind of come out of hibernation. Other people have referred to it as the Battletech Renaissance, because we have a whole bunch of people who have played the video games, know it as Mech Warrior, playing it as a teenager, now are late 20s, early 30s, and hey, I remember that. I like war games. Let's check this out. I have disposable income. But the community overall is really great because it's kept the IP alive during the dark days. There's a strong fiction community, like the boards and the forums go back years. There's community members I have on my Discord who have been like, hey, I recognize you. Were you on that forum? And they're like, yeah, I recognize you too. So it's kind of the Venn diagram of the Battletech community is very wide, and it's one of those universes / IPs that pretty much everybody has heard of or like has some experience with, if only like their cousin played a lot of Mech Warrior. And I love the community. They are absolutely great. One of the things I feel we are great. One of the things I feel we are terrible about, and I include myself in this, we are really bad at networking and promoting ourselves. we're just those like nerds in the back of the local game store with the stack of rule books with these very articulately painted very detailed painted miniatures that have been playing the same game for 8 hours. It's a big barrier to entry, and tough to break into that conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I can relate to that. I'm actually not sure what the battle tech community around me is like. Unfortunately, the closest game store to me is a Games Workshop, so I'm sure they're not having Battletech tournaments. But
no. Although a lot of their players are probably playing that now, because we have been one of the ports from the Games Workshop exodus, we'll say.
Say someone does want to get into Battletech, pick up the core book, give it a read, maybe check out your podcast, and then where would you say they go next?
So there's a bunch of Discords and online communities, Facebook groups, for like local groups, also Megamech as a resource. That is a great place for people to learn how to play, because like I said, it does a lot of the heavy lifting. There's interface stuff that you can turn on that will show you where you can move, so you don't have to count it out, sort of thing. There's dedicated discords, or sorry, there's dedicated areas on discords to like getting people taught how to play. There's also, a very active community on the WNRP Discord who do weekly games, Tuesday night fight, where you can throw some stuff at the wall and have fun. We have a regimental campaigns going, which Chandler is doing an excellent job organizing. And yeah, there's a lot of places you can learn, and if you just find the right place, you can be like, hey, can someone teach me? I'd just like to pick up and learn how to play. Most people will be like, yeah, absolutely. How much time do you got? What do you know? It's just one of those, you got to poke us and ask.
So definitely sounds like read the core book, maybe do a little online research, and just try and find some people and be like, hey, can I hang out with you guys?
Yeah, there are also Catalyst demo agents that do games at local game shops. A couple weeks ago, I went to a grinder where the demo agent had basically pre-made a set of lists of machines with approximately the same point value that people could pick a die out of a bag, roll, and whatever you rolled on the dice and the color of the die determined what you got off the table. And as soon as you died, you just rolled again and sent another machine in, and you kept going. And it was a lot of fun. And this is a really good community because it's one of those ones I feel, and maybe this is just my lived experience, where like if you're like, hey, I'm not 100%, can we double check? Everyone's just like, yeah, absolutely, because we recognize that there's a lot of rules.
That sounds really awesome. So grinder, that's that just where like everyone throws mechs in and you go at it?
Exactly, a free for all.
Okay. Yeah, see,
Yeah.
that seems like a little less intimidating when there's a bunch of people there and
Mm-hmm.
than just trying to, like, I remember trying to get into Warhammer, and it's like, all right, so you got to find someone else to play with, and then this guy's got this army that he's been building for 2 years, and he's going to be giving you pointers while also trying to absolutely destroy you, and then just a weird vibe all around, for me anyway.
No, yeah, I totally understand it and get it. The analogy or comparison to the grinder I went to a couple weeks ago was one of the players pulled a machine that has like quite literally the only mech that has a standard piece of experimental tech on it. Like this piece of tech exists, it is established, it's on other vehicles and things, but the only mech it is on this one, and it does this weird rule thing, and so it's more, unless it's like it's less of a this is how you do it in this situation. It's like, no, this is just a weird tech, here's what it does, go at it.
Yeah, you rolled a very strange niche scenario, so we might all have to look this one up, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you've got a little game going in your local community?
Well, technically it's in your local community, because we figured out this last week we're gonna we're gonna have it hosted on your guys' Discord. But it's my game of Vampire the Masquerade. I use 5th edition. I'm gonna have some friends, members of my community, and my brother, and your co-host John, and we're gonna run around Calgary and figure out what's going to happen, because I've made a sandbox for them to play in, and it'll be interesting because, well, the hope is that one day I can get everything codified and written down enough, remove it from the brain meat and put it on a page enough that theoretically I could do a storyteller vault or something. But because everyone I describe it to, they're like, that's super cool and scary. Because the Calgary is owned by the Camarilla and Edmonton is owned by the Anarchs, and they have a alliance, a non-aggressions pact, because of things that have happened in the past, specifically when they worked together to push the Sabbat out. And the city of Calgary is the main stage, and it's run by a prince who was an industrialist before he got embraced. And I kind of took this weird cathartic perspective on it for building the world, because I was like, okay, I'm a Camarilla prince. I have unlimited funding and I can do what I want. How would I build an actual utopia, functioning society, city that is kind of like, self-sustaining and good and, as close to a paradise as I can think of, at least for me, in the vacuum. Now let's go and put a vampire in charge of it. Oh no. It's like he does lots of good things for the population, but the byproduct is what he wants, not the intent of the good thing is a byproduct. He wants to make sure that all the people in Calgary are fed, because that buys loyalty to him and his company, and also it makes them more passive, because when people are hungry, bad stuff happens.
Yeah, company towns are pretty scary. I was actually listening to a podcast earlier today about Gary, and it was originally a company town, and that's how it ended up the way it is.
Yeah, like the idea of a company town, like I don't know what it is about me. Maybe it's like my Scottish heritage, because the Scots also settled down, in Kentucky and West Virginia, the Appalachians and all that. But there's something about that vibe story area that I've always been like, I dig that,
Yeah.
And the idea of company towns are just like, I feel a very untapped sort of horror setting, because it has that institutionalized systemic sort of horror, as well as the people being monsters on top of that. And so then when you put that into Vampire the Masquerade, you can be more like, well, the people being monsters are actual monsters, and maybe the systemic systems that are exploitive are set up by the monsters.
No, yeah, kind of a top-down situation there.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody designs a little different, right?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I usually go work in the exact opposite direction. I ask my players what they're going to play, and then I write everything out there. I'm like, last game I was like, all right, I've got 3 cities picked out. Tell me what you guys want to play. And then I narrow it down. I have a lot of big grand ideas, but the granular details just kind of slowly fall into place.
No, it's fair. I like to make a sandbox that my players can play in, and there's a timer on a lot of things, whether you realize it or not, whether you've been told about it or not, and stuff's going to happen. Schedules are set, and how you deal with it and how you play in that is neat and interesting. I mean, I'm also thinking, so the plan long term is actually to get the game eventually archived or streamed or recorded for other people to enjoy. But that is a little bit further down the road. And one of the other things further down the road, which after I get that all set up, because, I can reuse that homework, is Battletech also actually has RPG settings, or sorry, has RPG mechanics. It has 2 systems. It has a Destiny system and a Time of War system. And we recently got told that a Time of War will get a 3rd reprinting, which is exciting because it has been out of print for a long time. And honestly, a lot of the community thought it was not going to be supported. So that's super cool.
So is it a reprint or an update or a new edition, or do we not know yet?
It's a reprint. It's a 3rd printing. There'll be like a little bit of errata, like there always is, sort of thing. But there is no overhaul. The new system is actually Destiny, which they came out with recently as part of the Kickstarter. And it is interesting. I think it has a lot of merit, but there's some mechanics that I find need tweaking. But then again, I'm also the person, I am the type of DM, ST, GM, whatever acronym you use, where so we have the established canon. This is all of the stuff we know. That's cool, but what happens at our table is our universe. This is our world,
I definitely get behind that kind of idea. The only problem now is that me, Sarah, and Skipper and James have been doing the vampire show long enough. Now we actually know a lot of the lore, whereas before I was like, well, I know none of the lore, so I assume no one else does. So unless someone brings it up, it's not canon in my game.
Yeah.
But now we'll be sitting there and be like, wait a minute, we talked about this on an episode. I don't think.
Yes, one of the follies of being a content creator.
I know too much. I've seen what man was never meant to see.
Yeah, no, but it's a cool universe. You can play it as a single person doing the crime syndicate stuff because the universe has a lot of low tech Shadowrun vibes, we'll say. And you can then pilot the stompy robots and do the classic Battletech, and then you can go up to the units or go up to commanding units with Alpha Strike. And yeah, no, again, it is one of those universes where how much of the buffet do you want? Because it's all there. You just gotta figure out what you want to grab.
That's interesting. So you could almost like run a campaign where, oh, you're all playing pilots in like an RPG like setting, and then now it's time for the mech fight. So we're gonna switch over to the other rule set and actually play out like the mech battle, and then
Absolutely, there are systems both homebrew and official for like porting over the stats between not only like systems but like also like certain quirks getting or certain abilities that are in one system getting like, well, this is how this translates to this.
That's awesome. I love that idea. Being able to like play a game that has like multiple scale view of what's happening. Like you start out as, like you said, like a little like sci-fi criminal, and you work your way up to like a mech commander with a whole unit behind him.
Yeah. That is the glory rule. That is the glory road of the mercenary. You start with nothing, you get a good couple contracts, and you just snowball that into more luck, fortune, and death and killing, and build a unit of bloodthirsty killers behind you.
Well, awesome. So people want to learn more about this Battletech stuff. Where can they find you online?
Our podcast is on every RSS feed or service that I am aware of. If you just search on the Origin of Battlemechs, we should come up. We also have a dedicated website, which I will send a link to Hunter, so it can be in the show notes. We also have a YouTube channel. Also, I will send a link to that because we're not yet up to the point where we get a name URL. We're still at the point where it's just numbers and letters. But we're getting there soon, hopefully. And yeah, the YouTube channel is quickly getting caught up. The art on that channel is done by Sir Dub. The art on that channel for the videos is done by Sir Dub, another community member, which shout out to that talented individual. We have a Twitter, which is let me double check that just because it's been a while since I thought about it and I don't want to misspeak. We have a Twitter, which is at Origin of Mechs. We also have a Facebook group, and the primary hub that honestly I do most of my interactions on is the community Discord, the Armory of Ouroboros, which I will also provide a link for.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. I'll make sure to post all that info down in the notes below. And unless you got anything else, I think that does it.
I think that does it, other than thank you for having me on. I appreciate all the hard work you guys do and enjoy your guys' podcast because it is really good. I was turned on to it by a crazy community member from both of our Discords. They, in fact, baited me into listening to a couple episodes, and it got me hooked. So I'm glad, and it's been a pleasure meeting all of you guys. And this has been interesting and fun doing the cross-pollination.
Yeah, I know you and I have been playing in one of our many like community games. together, and that's been super fun. I will admit I do listen to on the Origin, but I usually click on ones that the name sounds interesting, and so maybe I should be listening chronologically, because sometimes I'm like, this is really cool, and sometimes I'm a little bit lost.
Totally fair. I mean, that is one of those, it's an issue with the format. I actually do have a community, a Google Doc sheet that has a breakdown of each episode where, like, if you want to find out where we talk about this subject in the data dive or what have you, it's a little easier to cross-reference, because I know some community members are like, I actually really don't care about the mechs. I just kind of want to learn about the lore. Which is fair, totally fair. I mean, that's one of the reasons I am planning to do some supercuts of the data dives, but I need to get a couple of the houses a little further into the history for that, because don't want to be showing favoritism, I guess. I don't know, shrug.
That's why we let our listeners decide those kind of things. That way no one can accuse us of anything.
I mean, that's why I chose to do all the mechs chronologically, because it's like, now I don't have to decide. I just look at the list. But again, thank you for having me on. This has been a lot of fun and interesting, and you guys do great work, and I look forward to everything in the future.
Absolutely. I'm excited to hear that game you're talking about getting started. And special thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Paralyze for our theme song. As always, you can find us on Twitter, on Instagram. We've got all that linked down below. We've got a Patreon. We've got a bunch of different tiers. We've got everything from getting to vote on what we talk about on our episodes to getting custom character artwork done by one of our hosts, Sarah. So if that sounds interesting to you, go check that out. And even if not, just thanks for listening. And I'm out of things to say, so have a good evening, and we'll talk to you later.
Class dismissed. Everybody have a great day.
Ding.